Nick Steele, and thanks for joining us this afternoon. Today we're talking about setting vision in the midst of, significant change. How do we make plans when, because of COVID-19, we don't actually know what's going to happen next week? We're talking today with two leaders who've had really good things to say about vision, Stuart Starr and Tim Clemens. But before we come to them, the pastor's heart, and Christian leaders actually all around the world with different circumstances looking for a community where we can help equip and empower each other. And they're letting us know that they're benefiting from the pastor's heart and finding the conversations that we're having here helpful. God has called us as his people, as leaders in his church, to take the gospel to the ends of the earth. And in our little efforts in the pastor's heart, we're trying to support those initiatives. And so we want to be connecting, supporting Christian leaders. And there's actually one couple of ways you can help us do that. If you've been impacted by an episode of the Pastor's Heart, why not share it with somebody you know, a peer in ministry? Send them a message saying you found that this was helpful, or link it to them in your social media feeds. And when you do that, it actually benefits them, but it also tells the platforms that we're going out on that people are enjoying the Pastor's Heart. It means improves the rankings, and more people, more leaders are able to discover us as well. And we'd love it if you could help us out financially. We are getting close to, but not quite yet, at our budget and covering the costs of the little team that puts this together. And so if you were able to help by sponsoring us at, $5 or $10 a month, then that would be terrific. Now, Tim Clemens from Grace City Church in Sydney and Stuart Starr from NewLife Church in Oran Park, it's great to have you. We're talking, and we've talked before, about setting vision in church, and they've had super helpful things to say, but it just dawned on me that this is the time of the year when we've got to be making decisions about what to do next year in terms of our church leadership groups, making decisions about vision, plans, staff hires, budgets, and it just feels so far away with so much going on. And I thought, what do we do? And so I rang up my friends and they've come to join me on the couch today. Thanks for joining us. I'm going to ask you about what you normally do in Vision in a sec, and then how you've changed. But just first, what's going on in your church? Where are you up to? Stuart, tell us.
Well, we're just about to reopen, Dominic, so we've been doing the streaming, which everyone has been doing. And this Sunday coming, we're holding our first service back in the building, which we're doing as a 55 plus service. So that takes the kids out of the equation, gives us a soft way to start and check our systems, but also allows us to look after the most vulnerable in our community and say, we love you and really care for you. So that's this Sunday, and then the following Sunday we're bringing our first of 3 services back. So we're in the midst of figuring all that out at the moment.
Yeah, Tim.
We have spent the month of July, or will spend the month of July, doing what we're calling watch parties, which is basically we've been pre-recording the service and just watching it in people's homes up until now. We're saying, get off the couch, come and join us, and let's watch it together. Still pre-recorded, it's just on the screen. You can watch it on your own at home, but it's much better in community, it's much better with friends, so come and let's watch it together. So that's what July is looking like, and we'll see what happens for August.
How's it gone the last week or so?
It's good. I think with all of these things, it was never going to be everyone returns back to the building and we have a big let's go. It's been so good to see you again. I think you have to start somewhere. You have to get the early adopters, and then you have to get the early majority. So it's gone okay. I think we've had 50% probably of people sort of come along, and maybe just under that. But we're 2 weeks in, and we'll see. I think as well, people know that they could watch it on home. So I want to win them with community and the biblical imperative of community, and that's always a challenge.
Yeah, we've what do? We properly went back on 2 weeks ago on the 5th of July, but we had kind of 2 practice goes the 2 weeks before, and we had that kind of same experience. The first 2 practice goes, I was a little bit disappointed in the numbers, but 5th of July we were fine actually. We were kind of at 75% on Sunday night, wow. and actually we were at 66% on Sunday mornings, and then last week we dropped a little bit on Sunday morning, but we were actually back to pre-COVID levels on Sunday night. Wow. And so that was pretty exciting for the middle weekend of the July school holidays.
This is what we were just saying, that these weeks are tough weeks
anyway. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, if you're getting people coming back at this moment, that's wonderful. That's really exciting.
Well, it is pretty nerve-wracking what's going on with how it's all going to play out. And I mean, when I rang you up a week or so ago and said, let's have this conversation, we weren't expecting Victoria to go wrong at that point. And so suddenly we're thinking, how do we plan for budget for July and vision for, how do we plan for vision and budget and staffing and things like that for next year? Well, you've had a week's notice, Stuart. What do you normally do first? And then tell us how you're thinking about varying things.
Yeah. So there's two ways for us to think about budgeting. I guess there's the clean sheet where you go, what's our vision? What would we like to do? And you could do that. We typically let the vision inform the budget that already exists. So we come back and we look at it and we say, does this align? And then we think about what new things will we do that take our vision forward. So that's our general process. And to be very frank, Dominic, I was super pleased to get your phone call because it said to me, in all of my COVID preparation plans, I actually need to be thinking about 2021 and my budget. So I think this conversation is incredibly timely, certainly for me personally, and it sets our parish council, who met last night, and I said, guys, guess what we're doing next month? We're working through this process together where we look again at our vision, we think about our priorities, and then we work out how we'll allocate our money.
And we should note that a couple of times, or I don't know, half a dozen times on the Pastor's Heart, we've done an episode particularly to help ministers on a subject, and people have come back to me afterwards and said, Dominic, that was really good, but I just wish you'd done it 2 months ago because it was too late for me this time. Yeah. What about you, Tim? What's your normal thing? Yeah.
Normal thing, around now I'm starting to think about next year, have conversations with parish council saying, okay, so I think when it comes to vision, you determine 4 steps, you determine the vision, you think, okay, what do we need to achieve the vision? Third, who do we need to achieve the vision? And then fourth, let's get the money to actually pay for those people. So, the vision hasn't changed, it continues to be the same. The what do we need? What roles do we need? I think some of the complexity and the uncertainty of this present season has really been around probably more the tactical side of things, more so than the strategy. And so for us, the strategy largely remains the same. Maybe a strategic decision or a strategic hire that maybe comes out of this, I'm still on the fence of it, would be do we want a media and communications, because all of a sudden online church is for us now a strategy in a way that it wasn't before, so maybe that's part of it. But really, normally I'm having these conversations about now anyway, and then we'd talk about it as a staff team as well come August, so pretty soon, and then we would sort of take some plans and some vision to the church in around October and invite people to financially contribute to that. So that's kind of the usual pattern.
So all of us are kind of on that same sort of thing of July, August, make your decisions, September, roll it out to the key leadership things, and then really engage in a campaign of getting people on board in fourth term. Okay, so how do we go about making decisions now when everything's so uncertain? Stuart.
Yeah, exactly. How do we make decisions? I think part of it is acknowledging the reality. So whereas before in a pre-COVID world, you might say, what's our 5-year plan? And basically on the balance of probability, things roll out in a pretty standard sort of way. I think we have to feed uncertainty into our mindset and not see it just as the stranger that we hope goes away. I actually think the way that the world's changed at the moment, we actually need to think about ongoing uncertainty as a factor that feeds into how we plan and strategize. So rather than just concretely saying, look, we're definitely going to do this in X and Y, I actually think we need to start thinking a little bit more flexibly and build a different style of budget. That's where I'm up to now. I'm actually just starting to think about that.
Okay, a different style of budget.
What do you mean?
You obviously got to make concrete commitments to staffing and that sort of thing. But when I think about what events we do or even what ministries we run, okay, for instance, so we're in a growing suburb which has families everywhere. Our midweek playtime ministry, sort of 50, 60 people in the building with kids. I'm not sure whether that can run in a current environment. What do I do if that's been a major connection strategy? how does that impact the way I spend our money? Now, I haven't got an answer to that at the moment, Dominic, but I'm thinking rather than going, oh, look, very soon, next year, everything will get back to normal, and that key cornerstone of the way our ministry works will be fine. I actually think I've got to take a step back now and say, in an environment that can blow up like Victoria in a couple of weeks, what do we do? What's our next solid step for building our pathway of discipleship? And honestly, I don't have answers to that.
I was talking to Andrew West over at Church by the Bridge, and he was saying they'd had a vision night the other night on Zoom.
Right.
And Paul Dale had said, and I thought this was really clever, he said, we don't really know what's going to happen the next few months, but we know where we want to be in 5 years' time. Do you know?
Sure.
And I thought it was interesting for me because I think I've been talking more, what's our 12-month vision, you know, in my
Sure.
communication. And I thought, there's an idea. I could think about clearly where we want to be in 5 years' time and then say, well, we don't know what's going to happen now, but we do know where we want to be.
Sure.
You know,
That's really cool.
Do you want to bounce around there?
Yeah, well, I guess that's similar to what I was saying before in the sense that the vision hasn't changed.
No.
It's always the same.
Yeah.
So that's where we're going. Thousands of disciples throughout Sydney and beyond, radically committed to the cause of Christ. The strategy hasn't really changed, and so next year we were already thinking about putting a kids minister on, so let's continue to do that because we want to grow our kids ministry. So for us, the specific cost of the ministry as opposed to the people, in our budget at least, tends to get lost in the roundings. And so
Sure, the stuff is always the big...
that's primarily where I'm trying to look
Yep.
and go, okay, there's certainly a factor there, but that's probably not hugely influencing my uncertainty and how we're feeling. I think for us, so I'm a planner. I dot every I cross every T. I'm very uncomfortable without a plan. COVID has taught me, and I shared this with the staff recently. I said, from now on, at least for this season, we make 3-month plans at most, and even then, really only month 1 do we have any degree of mild confidence about. And so for the first time ever, I'm slightly more comfortable saying, I can tell you what's happening in July, and a week or two before August, I guess that's now, I'll tell you what's going to happen in August. And I think that's that, but that's in the tactical side of things. That's when are we opening, when is live services resuming, the budget, the vision, who are we hiring, I think that largely for me remains the same.
Yeah, I think that's right. So term at a time is your real concrete planning horizon. But Dominic's super helpful. This is who we are. These are the things that we care about. This is where we're heading. All that stuff absolutely stays the same. But it does impact eventually down to your budget level as to what you're trying to achieve. So for instance, classic example for us would be big budget item is our carols, and I'm saying I don't even think that can happen this year. But that's a key part of our strategy. It's a significant part of our budget. I need to really radically think about what we do with that part of our budget. I don't have an answer, Dominic, if you're looking across.
Well, no, it's a different question. How to strategize pre-evangelistic contacts at Christmas time if you can't run a carol service. I mean, that's a really good discussion. We should do an episode on that. but in terms of the discussion we're wrestling with at the moment, I think I'm hearing you say, still make your 2021 plans now. Do you know,
Sure,
and still have conversations. I mean, it's just helpful to recognise. I mean, we wrote down a year ago that one of our really key planks was we wanted to raise up 2 people a year for full-time ministry. Do you know? Well, that means I've got to go around and be tapping some people on the shoulder now who are some of our young talent timers and not sort of taking the foot off the accelerator because of COVID. And yet I'm feeling tempted to take the foot off the accelerator, but I got to not do that. Yeah.
And that's where your conviction to your vision has to stand. Is that really who we truly are? So is that a top order priority, or is that just a good idea in the good times? And you're saying, no, that's a top order priority. We need to get onto it now.
I think it is. Yeah, that we want to be serious about raising up workers for the harvest. Yeah.
No, I think that's incredibly helpful. It's good.
So we say, okay, we continue to plan, making our decisions now with our church councils, with our leadership, and continue to roll it out whether we're live, whether we're in person. I was feeling like it's hard to say, come on, damn the torpedoes, let's go, when it's just me and a TV camera.
Yep.
Yeah.
I know the in-person stuff is far more powerful, isn't it? Certainly for us as preachers giving our message, we sort of get the feedback live, which I think a lot of us is part of the delivery. Is I'm seeing this is getting communicated or not. I think that's absolutely the case. So bring it on. Let's get back in person if we can. But certainly not damn the torpedoes, Dominic. We want to acknowledge the torpedoes and steer around them if we can.
Right. Okay. You've been doing some vision though. You actually chose to move some of your vision time. Almost to do, I guess, perhaps more drip feeding than all in one at fourth term. Or
Correct. So we at the moment, in the middle of July watch parties, we've said, okay, we've gone from all in our houses, we want to try and move towards, now who knows what will happen with Victoria, but ideally we want to get people back in the building, and in order to do that, I want to do two things. I want to rebuild your confidence to gather again in larger numbers.
And you were saying to me, you think people are turned into couch potatoes a bit.
Thank you for misquoting me. That was not what I said.
What did you say?
Well, I think so. We've called the series "From Couch to 1K."
I got couch.
So, based off the well-known fitness app Couch to 5K, our vision is thousands of disciples throughout Sydney and beyond. So 1K, thousands of disciples, from couch to 1K, designed to help us get off. So both rebuild confidence, but also rebuild convictions. And because I think through COVID, it shouldn't surprise us if one of the key spiritual disciplines that's not only commanded, but we've also built into our lives to keep us spiritually fit and healthy, has been the gathering together with other believers. You can't expect not to grow spiritually fat to some degree if you all of a sudden take that out and don't substitute it. I'm not saying that the only way to be a real Christian is to gather together with, in our typical Sunday service, because Paul was in prison, and I'm pretty sure he did a pretty good job of being a Christian. But it's what we've built into our lives, and so at best, online service is like the treadmill, equivalent, the spiritual equivalent. And so we've had people become Christians, we've had people join our church, which is awesome. But I think the majority of people will be have put on a bit of spiritual fat over COVID.
So it wasn't a complete misquote.
Maybe not. And so what we're trying to do for the 4 weeks of July is effectively pull the vision series from when it would normally be, October, into now to preach vision, what are the convictions we need, etc., etc. So, will
you do it again?
I think,
in a different form? Or, yeah.
I don't think so. Instead, a little look under the hood here, I think we'll probably preach a 7-week work series around there. And because part of the whole process, obviously, is raising finances. One of the things that we'll touch on in a 7-week series would be, we call it Payday Friday. What do you do with your money? And so that will be the thing that we'll use to encourage people. This is what we're doing. So it'll look different to what it used to, absolutely. But we'll still talk about money around that time, because you need to ask for the money to fund the vision for the following year.
It's really good. I think, Dominic, we're talking about budget, and one of the interesting parts of the equation, I think we need to preach vision now because our church needs to remember who it is as they come back to be in person. I think that's a reality. And so there is a sense in which doing that now is really appropriate. The other part of the equation as we think budget for next year, I think there is still a financial uncertainty in the wider economy at the moment that we need to acknowledge. And so if you were going for a crank the handle budget last year plus 3%, there is a degree of uncertainty from now to the end of the year where we've got September with JobKeeper and all of the rest of it. I don't know at the moment. I think the top level priorities and that sort of thing, you can do all that work now, and we'll also need to keep a weather eye as we prepare for 2021 on exactly how the second half of this year unfolds. Because I do think there's a reality to the financial insecurity that is just hanging over our environment at the moment. It means if you tried to lock in a crank the handle budget, that it would not be acknowledging, I think, the reality that we find ourselves in.
Can I suggest, I think there's 3 things that are blockages to raising money. 1 is you as the leader, 2 is the people, 3 is the economic climate. And it could, I think, almost very, very rarely is it actually the economic climate that means we don't get the money.
I agree with that too.
But it may well be a factor for us in this current season, but we'll see. One, the leader, you need to have the vision and the confidence to actually ask for the money. Two, the people, I think
But just tell me about that. Keep going on that, because I mean, you drip it, and I'm always impressed.
I appreciate that. You need to have a sense of where we're going, and so you need to inspire people. You need to have a contextualized version of the Great Commission. Go make disciples. You need to keep saying, people, this is where we're going. So I think people are inspired by that, and you also need the courage to say, will you come and be a part of it? With your time, your talent, and your treasure. So you need the courage. When I first started, I was a coward. I didn't like talking about. I'm still a coward, but I'm more comfortable asking for money now than I was 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's the leader. Second of all, there's the condition of your people. In that, I think you're right. The current economic climate will mean that people are feeling a sense of anxiety. Now, I think that's a spiritual problem. So there's a real sense there, but it's also a spiritual problem that they need a pastor to diagnose, because 1 Timothy, 5, somewhere, 6, forgive me, you know where it is, warn those who are rich in this present world, 6, not to put their hope in their wealth, which is so uncertain.
Absolutely.
But to trust in God. And so people will be tempted, not knowing what the future is, to hold on to their wealth, because that's where they're finding their certainty. But they need a leader to say, this is where we're going. They need a pastor to rebuke, to gently come alongside and say, it's always been uncertain. It's just you're feeling it more now. We need to trust in God. But then third, you do need a wise, there's the economic climate. So what do they need? They need a financial, they need someone who's financially savvy to not just ridiculously say, this is what we're going to do. You need to pay attention to the economic climate. You need your parish council to say, hey, this is what you want to do, but you know what? I'm not convinced that we can actually raise that fund. So I think all three of those work together.
But it sounds like you're saying, even in this COVID season, the first two are still, for many of us, I mean, there'll be some churches where, we're going out, people are watching us in countries that are in much worse economic situations than Australia. But in the context that we're in Australia, for most of us, 1 and 2 are perhaps still going to be bigger than 3.
You can't control 3.
Yep.
You can't control 3, but at least you can control yourself, and you can influence what you say to your people. That's leadership. And so don't worry about what you can't control. It's not your circle of concern. Stephen Covey here, everyone. Your circle of influence, you can do two. You can influence the leadership and the heart of your people, getting at the spiritual issue.
So how do you do it? Tell me about some of those conversations.
Now you're pushing me on it. Well, I think when the finance piece comes, we'll talk about that. I would probably preach from, frankly.
That's a great 1 Timothy 6. You've got me interested.
I think that's where we need to go.
Yeah.
But I hold that off for when I'm inviting people to partner with us for the following year financially. Hey, everything is uncertain. You're right. But let's trust in God. One of the ways we proactively trust in God is through not trusting in our will.
I think the other thing that builds it, so the equation that I've summarised from Rod Irvine is vision plus trust equals generosity. Okay, vision plus trust, and that's essentially what you're talking about. Vision comes from the leadership, trust is in the people, and the outcome is that generosity. How do you build the trust? Well, it's vision becoming reality, one concrete step at a time, over time. And so, as you talk about, doing your vision, you're saying, here's what's happened, here's a bit of our story, and then here's the hill that we're going to go and take. It's see that vision has become concrete reality, little steps at a time. Yeah. As we point off into a future that doesn't exist yet, as a leadership team, we are saying, trust us as we do this together. And so I think it's the boldness to say there's the hill, but it's also the track record to say, and they're the little tiny footsteps that we've taken in the past as well. And so it's those two things together, I think, that raise the trust level, which is the essential ingredient with the vision to see generosity unlocked. So I think it's those things together.
It's interesting. Last week when we were talking to Philip Jensen about raising up people for ministry, I mean, he talked about vision for life, but also them knowing that you love them. You know? And so you say vision and trust. He was saying vision and love.
Yeah, great.
You know? But they're linked, aren't they? Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. What's your strategy?
So similar kind of stuff. In terms of what we preach our values in that series. So we'll say we want to be a church that's faithful, adventurous, compassionate, and enduring. That's how we'll live out what it means to be Christians where we are. And we're doing that so that we can give and live the message of New Life. So we speak very particularly, what are we trying to do? We're trying to see New Life come to every home in Oran Park in the growing southwest for their salvation, the good of the community and the glory of God. That's what we're about. So, but New Life in every home. And we say, we're going to do that one concrete step at a time. Here's what we're going to do next year that will help us move another step further down the track of doing that. So cast a big vision, turn it into a concrete step, and then ask people to help make that happen.
Tell us your cheeky $10 a week. Tim doesn't like this.
Tim doesn't like this. So as we do our vision series, we ask people to think. We want to think about their time commitment. What are you doing in your week? We want to think about the talents and skills that they have. And we talk about treasure as well, their finances, and we ask people to give sacrificially. And I say, look, if you haven't really thought about it, as you fill this form in, if you haven't thought about it, if you haven't prayed through it as a husband and wife or in your household on your own, then I just say tick the box that says we'll give an extra $10 a week. Because if you haven't thought about it at all, I'm sure you can afford it because you're not so worried about what you're going to give that's scaring you. So just tick that box. If you haven't had a chance to pray together as a family, just tick that box. And the cheeky idea is, wonderfully, over time, our families give more incrementally, a little bit at a time, or massively and significantly when they prayerfully and generously give. So it's a cheeky idea, Dominic. But part of it is just saying to people, look, you'd put your Netflix subscription on. How much prayer did you put into that?
Why don't you like it?
Don't call me out. Unless done well, it possibly feels slightly salesman-y, used car salesman, sleight of hand, which I know is not I want to stay away from anything that is perceived like that. So, different context.
Yeah. And look, the reality is, I'll try and do it carefully.
Yeah, I bet.
Try and do it carefully.
And in your hands, with your smile.
Possibly. You find out, have a look at the church. But so the idea, though, is people's income probably has gone up.
Yeah.
A lot of our people don't think about revisiting the giving once they've committed to it. And so the reason for having that prompt there is just to say to people, think again about your giving. And if you haven't done it recently, there is something you could do that would just incrementally pick it up a little bit. And I'd be totally transparent with you guys and anyone who's watching and say, they add up. The families that just tick that box because they can do it, and it really isn't any effort to do it, that does add up over time to be something quite significant for us and helps our people think, I can keep growing in Christian generosity. Rather than I had a really big hot moment 3 years ago and nothing changed. I haven't revisited that number. And so I just find it's a tool amongst a number.
Gentlemen, thanks very much for coming and talking to us. Yeah, my guests on The Pastor's Heart, Stuart Starr, and he's the senior pastor of Oran Park, New Life Oran Park, and Tim Clemens. And Tim is at Grace City Church in Waterloo in inner Sydney. You've been with us on The Pastor's Heart. We'll look forward to your company next Tuesday afternoon.